Good evening, selohtine edladot. Welcome back, boy. Thought only dino halhunta doubts. It's te suas on dusina hole. Kung hingalo andala, right? So over the last few weeks, a lot of things. Hunt asiganai there logole. Um, kind of breakish through adois new na usi or lisi, right? Said thiga di ne ye chao. But chased other let us, yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But welcome, good evening, Hello do nide si neoli doing zineke, edre over the last few days, maybe 3 weeks taunk tha yeah, about 3 weeks I would say. You know, te what would you call it? Hunt they dene beni duede the duat la. So, a lot of stress. Llung si haris dine. So Horin knees ein lele hole. Some days harder than most. But doen zinnige hes now. Selien United droja. Duhun. Hot salnadra. Na dana tu dogani then see. Be enne hello to a John sa hello to the dogani then see. Nadro. And you know, Eshton, maybe I'm gonna say about a month. Tha duhun 13 hul trao trajal June ke yeah. Tha Tazaret traita. There's no, you know, te join lele. But last year is in a yati. Ni holtsie berin keo ondela. Then koda di lila, then of course, gabin dance and either they massines, but don't who thinks, lisi, you know, and the doing got a who thinks, lisi, then it's not do it, tell and and can't wait the hundi see her stanlu, then a benia doing on either jare boring nile. Then a head and yet he had the haring tia. Baris dina, it last nyanes, and nast eoto and kuanast eredi, failure. It just doesn't sit well with me. So, you know, can only go up. It dies into he. A lot of yeah, that's why I don't let that being quiet. I know Dennis, it's in message at unload. I sweater order on Lassie. It's in the mail. Doc see. Um, you know, and yeah, cool. Sahal. That's why I've been quiet last 2 3 weeks. Okay, other just sitting work as you can ask throw. This is one of the things about resting and then especially ADHD and depression. Going to see right. But it's a thing on neither nail. ADHD, depression, Torlius, yeah. Um, Holabor and Nila, then a knee not surround a lot, right? Man, Holline, it's then it's unfunad on la massi benes, text, son and elu, and, all those things. So, sin nesa, some days, tladuno, some days, untladelu, so, then a halias tiu, then it's unfuna slow, and Thahiti. So yeah, it's Llum has no nashja. I'm not gone. Uh, Dene Lanta hula tanu thande landa dene halayastila. Adu bananestro dene halyastia bananesters. There's a few topics actually. Dene halyastia. I was just gonna post them. Then a record us video post us Nestanza. Kind of going forward into plan Aslazi. I probably won't have any guests, maybe here or there. But Lantu for the future, Lantu dono Sahal dono al how am I gonna set it up for the future? A couple events out of my control. Then Etin Yazi, it got postponed. Samba Controlling Samba has there I don't get Facebook it's in the no paid advertisement conti cielo. Okay, events nasa okay, that's how I keep going. But any episodes, lound a lot there thene land adre. Then every day you cannot deal, you know, then Willie, NBC, the last I see go shele. Address radio, I can see cannot desi la da but sila. See they do deal nobody tonkola. So going forward, blunt yaslia, yeah, you know, events lined up there, okay. That's how I got into emceeing or speaking or going to say sweaters whenever they sell, if they do. What are the, so how am I gonna keep going? Long run, huh? Because dene honi daruth dene dabi neon the right? Dene atiedit I the dene dabi neon the si MBC Willy bericht doke say atie dest au lisi, dene it's unfuna slilo si um dene dust ailala, right? Don't do the halia that's anyas tide he da said grab me a water, her sent hot in a ban la tia. Say it in Dene Henny. You say it right, Henny. To the Bahilchu, please, Kolya, yeah. Dene Koti, yeah. You know. And last weakness then is it's any Fred Dene cheesy. Kuwe dalu twirzi. Sekani ahni is unfuna la FaceTime on la. Sinene is a balya iltiera. Fred Dene cheesy. your school balaza no tail to balaza and Winnipeg's a gani. So kusine next Monday July saga Yati twizin as a daylon is not your nets and funo was clear, you know. Then see nin is it's and funo lie. Cause not a hunt you know, not do and then a benia jare phone the nari aren't ilu right, then a hellion estilo and I've done that. Eventually I reached back out, you know. But it's yeah, Tejo in Lela Kule Hesna. But going forward, Dona de some kind of business plan to keep this going, long run. That's what I'm gonna be working on. Says in website and just grind away, any events, kontisie, no today, whatever it may be, then a halias tuto, whatever, any kind of work like this, anywhere, duhun treaty days, duhun Thursday, I'll be in Saskatoon, Métis Nation, hell. So Métis Nation must see Benestan. Dene Chu Anna Yael Robert Marasti Chudra Impact Benefit Agreement, Sina Dalia Métis Nation, Thursday. A little bit of hope for myself financially. Just Gabin Donut and either always, ni Yale ni Yale. Ni Dio and today Nice has an Idia, so and a lot of it is studentist, it's finances, right? So and eight Tesua in Lele. But I didn't want to be stuck there anymore. So that's my plan anyways. Going forward. But however it's gonna work, I don't know. Then I held as to how am I gonna set this up, right? All that stuff. Hello, Ryan. Hello, hello, hello. Many things to think about. So this week, I tell this so ani. Queer the didn't la for chip one, then it didn't here. Irgaric and in the about 2 kilometers, one end north end, that's and then airport got it about 7 kilometers to the town, and then about 2-3 kilometers airport, and kind of around. So we boys sniasa, and then they go Shaundala, right? Your size it's any the Bastor sniasa and chief, Due in Leyland, Shumba. So yeah, a lot of things. Do the Denizan Yalti bunch in the Dinlia has a Dilashnusla on a rake right? So a lot of things, I've been keeping track. They're not engaging as much, but I've been keeping track, and so yeah, that's a bit about Dahui Eyes a hell, you know what I mean? And I'm still here. Masino Anastano. As it's unfunan lao and just hey, I done it. It means a lot. Sin niesa. And of course, I just can't give up. you know. But Dure, this is a reading from whose lines it's insane Lani. Claudia. Oh, Edith Minus says insane la. I don't know Bagaya or Tuto, but very interesting read. 5 pages and I'm gonna post it. Okay? Post us kind of Denesu Tlinega. Denesu Tline good warriors that dealer. Yeah, Thuntha. Thunth. Thunth spear. Thunth. Right? Okay, just kind of a little bit. Let's go back. Bagaya Altia, okay? Inhabiting a desolate land where survival often depended upon unpredictable movements of the caribou. So, Tengal Hidalana. Satani ko zatlina. Lesson was in need de la desina. You know, and we were nomadic and but they are part of the Athabascan linguistic group, as are their neighbors, the Beaver, Slavey, Yellowknife, and Dogrib tribes. Their name Chippewan was taken from the Cree term pointed skins, given to them because of their practice of having tail-like protuberances hanging from the bottom of their shirts. In fact, this characteristic gave rise to a fantastic story of a race of part human, part animal creatures which inhabited the far north. The confusion arose from the difficulties of early interpreters in explaining that the tails belonged to the shirts, not to the men. The Chippewas were also known as Wichipewak by the Crees, Montagnais by the French, and the northern Indians by the British. In more recent years, they've adopted the general term of Dene. So at the time of white contact, about 1700, the Chippewas hunted in the area between Great Slave Lake and Hudson Bay. To the north were their deadly enemies, the Inuit, while south were the Cree, and west the Slavey and Dogrib. And although the area extended to the shores of Hudson Bay, they were not a sea-going people, but usually remained in the interior. Henry Kelsey, a Hudson Bay Company fur trader, learned of their existence in 1689 and tried to bring them to the coast to trade, but was unsuccessful. In 1716, however, William Stewart succeeded in locating them and brought 10 of them to visit York Factory. A year later, Fort Churchill was established on Hudson Bay at the southeast edge of their hunting grounds, and soon the Chippewan were visiting the post on a regular basis. Those who hunted in the eastern part of their land came each spring and autumn, while those farther away visit only once in every 3 years to visit the Hudson Bay. So if you're from northern Saskatchewan, then you're going to want to listen to it. It's about 5 pages long. I'm going to go ahead and read it. When the Chippewas traded, they limited their purchases to guns, ammunition, and metal utensils, and soon opened their own thriving intertribal trade with the Dog Ribs and other interior tribes. In addition, guns gave them superiority in the war, which enabled them to push northward into Inuit territory and westward to the Peace River. In 1778, when the Northwest Company post was opened on Lake Athabasca, most of the Chippewas abandoned the long trek to Hudson Bay. When a chief arrived at a newly opened post that year, he said that he was pleased at having goods at the lake and promised to stop all his people from going to Churchill. Very interesting. In the meantime, the Crees farther south had also received arms from the traders on Hudson Bay and had pushed westward along the North Saskatchewan River. When the Beaver Indians retreated from what is now northeastern Alberta, the area was occupied by Woodland Cree from the east and Chippewas from the north. The latter tribe often penetrated as far south as Beaver Lake during its hunting expeditions. By the time the tribes had carved out their new areas, the Chippewas were in firm control of the lower waters of the Peace and Lake Athabasca rivers. Lake Athabasca and their old hunting area to the east. So the Denes, the Chippewas, which would be us. Well, I'm Chippewan, whoever, you know. I think many of the listeners are Chippewan. Explorer and Alexander Mackenzie, 1793, described the Chippewas as sober, timorous, and vagrant with a selfish disposition which has created suspicions of their integrity. At the same time, he found them easy to approach and willing to share their knowledge of the land with the explorer. He described them as not tall, but seldom corpulent, with a darker complexion than other tribes with a deep, piercing eyes. Some of the men wore black, bushy beards, although the majority plucked out any facial hairs, the four hairs. It's funny. It says, some of the men wore black, bushy beards. The Chippewas had the reputation of being fierce warriors who were frequently fighting their neighbors. In 1771, for example, Samuel Hearn engaged in some Chippewas at Fort Churchill to assist him in fighting the Coppermine River. When between 70 and 80 warriors accompanied him, he learned that the trip was an excuse for attacking the Inuit. When they finally discovered a small encampment, the Chippewas made an early morning attack and slaughtered 30 men, women, and children. The shrieks and the groans of the poor expiring souls were truly horrible, said Hearn, and was much increased at the sight of one young girl, about 18 years old, whom they killed so nigh me that when the first spear struck her, she fell down and twisted about my feet and legs. In about 1760, the Chippewas established an uneasy peace with the Crees after they had driven them away from Lake Athabasca. Similarly, they fought with the Yellowknife and Dog Rib Indians to prevent them from opening direct trading relations with the forts on Hudson Bay, but once the companies moved inland, the need for hostilities ceased. With the Inuit, however, the feeling of hatred was retained and occasional skirmishes continued well into the 19th century. The caribou was the main source of food for the Chippewas. During the summer, one of the favorite means of killing them was by spearing them from canoes as they swam across rivers or lakes. On other occasions, they were driven into traps where they were killed with arrows. In winter, they were snared or caught in deep snow. Other animals, such as buffalo, musk ox, and moose, were killed in lesser numbers, while fish and waterfowl often supplemented the Chippewas' meager diet. As their hunting grounds included both the open barren lands, and the woodlands farther south. The bands often moved from place to place, either following the migrations of the caribou or eking out a marginal existence. Unlike the tribes to the south, the Chippewas did not have any structured form of leadership other than the head of a family, as the people usually travel in family groups. This was sufficient except during intertribal disputes. Very interesting read. Vanaria. Tanuthan. Comments Yadutlis. Superior strength often dictated the outcome. Similarly, the Chippewas had only a form of guardian spirit worship as their religion. There were no public prayers or rituals. Instead, each individual had its own spiritual protector, sometimes as a result of a dream. Often, the figure of this protector was painted on a shield when going to war, or the skin of the animal was buried with a man when he died. On the other hand, great faith was placed in the abilities of Indian doctors, who, through the use of medicinal herbs and incantations, could effect cures for various ailments. These men, whose powers often came as a result of visions, could also cast evil spells upon their enemies. So we had medicine people. The winter dress of a Chippewan man consisted of the thigh length caribou skin shirt with their hair left on, moccasins attached to the leggings, which extended to the waist where they were supported by a belt, and a breechcloth which hung down in front and back. In severe weather, the moccasins were stuffed with caribou or moose hair. The man also wore a belt, mittens, and a cap made from the skin of the deer's head. Over his entire costume, he wore a robe made of several caribou or fawn skins sewn together. Thus arrayed, said Alexander Mackenzie, a Chippewan will lay himself down on the ice in the middle of the lake and repose in comfort, though he will sometimes find a difficulty in the morning to disencumber himself from the snow drifted on him during the night. Wow. The woman's costume consisted of a dress which extended to her ankles and was fastened at the waist with a belt. For those with children, the dress was very full about the shoulders so that the infants could be carried on their backs, next to the skin. On their legs, the women had moccasins and leggings which were tied below the knee. Those who visited the Chippewas during the 18th century were of the opinion that the place of a woman was inferior when compared to other tribes. She was seen as a beast of burden who carried the family possessions or pulled the toboggan. The men had the reputation of beating their wives unmercifully. Yet, when William Butler visited the Chippewa camp on Athabasca River in 1873, he found a pleasant family scene. Some 10 or 12 people congregated around a bright fire burning in the center. The lodge was large, requiring a dozen moose skins in its construction. Quantities of moose or buffalo meat cut into slices hung to dry in the upper smoke. The inevitable puppy dog playing with a stick, the fat, greasy child punching the puppy dog, drinking on all fours of a tin pan, or sawing away at a bit of meat, and the woman, old or young, cooking or nursing. Because of their marginal life, the Chippewas had a culture which was easily replaced by practices brought in by Cree employees of fur trade. As a result, outside rituals were introduced, and even the more simple art forms were abandoned in favor of ornate designs borrowed from neighboring tribes. Similarly, objects of European manufacture soon replaced their own, but a more disastrous effect of the white man's arrival was the introduction of diseases. An epidemic of smallpox in 1781 wiped out 9/10 of the tribe, in some cases, taking away entire bands partly as a result of this catastrophe. The Chippewas ceased their warring activities against enemy tribes. The population of the tribe at the time of white contact estimated to be 3,500, but it declined to less than 1,000 at the beginning of the 20th century. So two Chippewa women are picking berries here, you know. Beginning of the 20th century, because of disease and starvation. During the early period, the Chippewas refused to accept alcohol. In the 1780s, Andrew Graham commented that they drink no spirituous liquors, while in 1793, Alexander Mackenzie that said that as the people are not addicted to spirituous liquors, they have a regular and uninterrupted use of their own interests. Yet the liquor continued to flow into the trading posts, and by 1819, the situation had so changed that a traveler noted there are as much corrupted by spirituous liquors as the Crees. Soon the entire economy of the Chippewas became tied to the trading posts. The tribe depended upon them for essential goods and devoted much of their time to trapping and preparing hides for the trade. During the mid 19th century, missionaries began to visit the Chippewas and found ready converts among them. Among was the first that was a Father Barassa. So if anybody knows these names, they let me know in the comments. So during the mid 19th century, missionaries began to visit the Chippewas and found ready converts among them. So selohtine. Among the first was Father Joseph Barassa, who went among the Chippewas and Crees at Cold Lake in 1845. In 1865, Bishop W.C. Bompas of the Anglican Church began his work in the Mackenzie River area and later extended his services to the tribes farther south. Soon, both Roman Catholics and Anglicans. So that's about Yaltinin DLC. Maybe before that, I don't know. 1800s, 17. Soon, both Roman Catholics and Anglican Church had establishes in Fort Chipewyan, and in 1899, a visitor to the fort reported that all the Indians we met were, with rare exceptions, professing Christians and showed evidences of the work which missionaries have and on among them carried on among them for many years. A few of them have had their children avail themselves of advantages afforded by boarding schools established in different missions. During the latter part of the 19th century, one band of Chippewas normally hunted in the Cold Lake area near North Saskatchewan, while others ranged much farther to the north. In 1876, when the Canadian government negotiated a treaty with the Cree and Ojibwe Indians, the southern leader of the Chippewas, Kinuseu, and his headman Antoine Xavier attended the sessions at Fort Pitt and signed on behalf of their followers. Not until 1899 did others in the tribe discuss a treaty In that year, the Chippewas in northern Alberta, northern Saskatchewan too, I'm Treaty 8 from Clearwater. So that one is 1899. So a lot of us are part of this history. I'm going to post this after. And the Northwest Territories and part of northern Saskatchewan signed Treaty Number 8 with the government. Signing for the treaties, the Chippewas were Laurent Zedine and Toussaint of Fond du Lac, Alex Lavillette, Julian Radfat, and Sept Heasel of Fort Chipewyan, Michael Mamdrill, and William Kiskere of Fort Smith, Adam Boucher of Fort McMurray, and Lucien Ate, Oliver Agersian, Vital Lamuel, Paulette Chandel of Great Slave Lake, and a total of 215 Chippewas accepted the terms of treaty during a long trek made by the commissioners north. Great Slave. So a total of 215 Chippewas accepted the terms. Ayateozinin DLC from the north. The treaty provided for the surrender of all hunting grounds by Indians in exchange for reserves and treaty money, tools and implements, and other benefits. Yet the Chippewas had doubts about the generosity of the terms which were offered. The chief at Fort Chipewyan said the commissioner displayed considerable keenness of intellect and much practical sense in pressing displayed keenness of intellect and much practical sense in pressing the claims of his band. They all wanted as liberal, if not more liberals than term, no more liberal terms than were granted to the Indians of the plains. At last, however, they accepted the treaty in 1907. The remainder of the Chippewas in northern Saskatchewan signed Treaty Number 10, which would be Dillon, Dillon, Birch Narrows, Pachenak, Fond du Lac, Black Lake, I do believe, or no, Black Lake and Wollaston, I think. I think. For some years, after these events, life went on as before, the only exception being that each spring an Indian agent traveled through the area paying treaty money. For example, when describing the trip in 1908, the agent said, "We proceeded on the Hudson Bay Company steamer Primrose to Fort Chipewyan on June 25th. We paid annuities to 564 Indians in the two bands there. During the year, 25 births and 14 deaths occurred." Describing conditions in that year, he said they reported a hard winter and a shortage of fur, but they managed to survive the winter with but little assistance from trading posts. In Alberta, 5 reserves were established for the Chippewas. The largest of these was the Southerly Cold Lake Reserve, which by 1996 had a population of 1,844 persons. Adjoining Lake Athabasca was the Chippewa Reserve and a population of 519, while north of Lac La Biche was Janvier Reserve, 295 people, and the Mackay Reserve with 453. A reserve at Fort McMurray contained mixed Chippewa and Cree bands, totaling 140 persons. In addition, there are 6 reserves in Saskatchewan and 2 in Manitoba. The Indians in the Northwest Territories did not receive reserves. For the Indians in the North, the dramatic change in their lives occurred during the 1920s when aviation ended their isolation. Within a few years, lakes were being fished commercially and the products flown out to eastern markets. Men were traveling to their distant trap lines by airplane, and outside civilization was thrust upon them. Similarly, the decline of fur markets after the Second World War, the loss of trapping areas, anti fur crusades, the improvement of educational facilities, and the expansion of welfare services all had dramatic but not always positive effects upon the tribe. Yet many Chippewas have prospered, some seeking new opportunities in urban communities, other finding a satisfactory life on their reserves. So, a Chippewa family was photographed in front of their home at Heart Lake about 1924. So, Bonaria, Heart Lake, Janvier, Fort McMurray, Fort Mackay, Fort Chippewa, Clearwater, that's in DLC. Probably Garson. I guess Durade, it would have to be something. Taylor's in Janvier, Tlanta, you know, history research, and then Lucho Twizzen, Cold Lake, somehow Chippewas and Ubagayel Tieredre, a Thai. There was just one. See, Torn gets Irid Dilsi, eventually. Kudune Dene Anohudzila, Chippewanzilu, right? So, very interesting. Done with Fancy. Throw it in the comments. I'm gonna post there are these pictures. I direct art you see it or read it, share it, whatever it may be. But masi chono and estano dunzinege salon tadurtia. Like I said earlier on, just going forward, I'll be around. I got some events booked, and you know, got a lot of planning to do. So masi cho salodina dunzinege teu tezu and inate hlaya huntadult inatlinole masi cho.